By the way, one of the things in that context, when you have an else clause and it's a bit further away from the if, you may want to have a comment to say what it does. What you do not want to do is have an else if and then it's just the inversion of the condition of the if statement. Because it's very easy to get them out of sync and then nothing happens. You always want an otherwise option. Version control. So the idea of version control is that we want to keep our code well organized. We want to help collaboration. We want to keep track of versions. We want to be able to go back if we accidentally delete something. I believe one of you had that happening. Or if you make a mistake, or if you do an experiment, etc. So you can use it to keep track of versions. You can go back to previous versions. You can use it to manage releases. In particular, if you look at branches, you can say, okay, you have a released version, version 2 or version 3, and then, oh, there's a bug. You go back to that version. You just fix that bug in there, and then you have a bug fix. You might then also take that bug fix and put that in your main development branch, often called a master branch, and you basically work in parallel. But you do not necessarily want to release your current work in progress just because there is a bug that is hitting people with the back things. So that's what you want to think about. Then there's a lot of terminology that you want to look at. And by the way, please make sure that you still look at the original slides. This is a summary, it's not everything. So we have in version control, we have a repository that stores all the change information, all the information of the version control things. You cannot directly edit this. I mean, there are some bits you can, but the database itself you normally do not edit by hand. In Git, that is stored in the .git folder. You know, Git is a distributed version control, so every place where you have a Git, you also have a repository. Then there's the term working copy. So this is the actual files that you edit, that you work. So this is your work in. In Git, your repository is the .git folder inside a working copy. So every working copy has its own repository attached to it. But a working copy is just one version. So you can even switch between versions using the Git tools to go, okay, I want my working copy to be this version, to be that version, to be that version, etc. That also comes to the idea of the checkout operation, where you basically get a particular version out of your repository. Often what you do is just, rather than say I want version with a particular identifier, I want the master one. That uses the master tag that is automatically set to the latest version or the master branch name. So you can get the latest version of the master branch from the repository. Because we have a, then there is, so that is, there's another thing, it's like you often want, if you have a non-distributed system, checking out a version means often that you are going to actually go to the repository and go get that version into a new working copy. Updating says, okay, just give me the latest changes. And then committed means that I send a set of changes to the repository. Depending on the system, you need to explicitly add items to your working copy before you can send them. Most of the systems do that, because there's also files that you do not want in your version control system. Git is particularly pedantic in that every change needs to be added. When you look at Android Studio or IntelliJ, they will actually help you with making this and will add things automatically for you. So you don't need to bother about that too much. So that is what committing is. But have a look further, because some of this may be very well coming up in the exam. So the exam will have the 30 questions take a rather scattershot approach. They will not look at, oh, these are the core topics. They will look at all the topics and have a few questions about each of them. There is a randomization. There is many more questions than you will be getting, but They will cover all the topics there that are not practice topics. I will not ask you about anything particularly Android specific, perhaps as an example, but not more than that. So VCS operations, we had a number of them. Add a file to the thing, ignoring a file, very important, the ability to ignore certain files. In Git, you do that just with the .gitignore file. You can say, okay, don't tell me about changes in this file. Don't offer me to add this to the repository. So when you look at the status of your repository, it says, okay, yeah, okay, these files are changed. The ignored files, it will just not display anything about them. And yes, you can also delete files from a version control system. However, that just deletes them from the branch, from the current working copy. And then when you commit it, it will be deleted from that version, not from history whatsoever. The idea of version control is that you do not rewrite history. If you delete a file, it is deleted. Now, there are some ways in which you can actually rewrite history, but that's a whole other ballpark. Although in Git, there is one way which you use that often is when it do something like called rebasing. But that is more if you're working with someone else's stuff and you don't want to have your changes be really, really complex, but you want to make your changes fit very well to their code. And in a distributed versions control system, we have the clone thing. So cloning is GitHub's version or Git's version of creating your own version of that repository. So you get all the change information from that repository, and then you can work on that locally. You can also clone a local working copy to another working copy, and then you can work with that. It also means you need to push to a remote repository or pull from a remote repository. And while you normally just have one single remote that you're working on, you can actually have multiple remotes that you work with concurrently.